The diamond bracelet felt like a chain, and the penthouse window, overlooking the endless glittering cold of Seoul, felt like a wall. She didn't want the riches, she wanted the breath. But Soraya knew that escaping a man like Hui meant she wasn't just running for her life, she was running from the only kind of love she'd ever truly known. The air in the penthouse was chilled and still, smelling faintly of expensive leather and the salty promise of the Pacific beyond the floor-to-ceiling glass. Soraya moved with the muted precision of a thief in her own home. Her heart didn't just beat, it hammered against her ribs, a frantic prisoner demanding release. In the corner, her vintage leather duffel, the one she'd bought years ago in New York, sat packed. It contained only essentials: her passport, a handful of US dollars, and the worn photograph of her late grandmother. She traced the edge of the granite countertop, the expensive material cold beneath her fingertips, mirroring the ice that had slowly crystallized around her own emotions over the past year. Her marriage to Hui wasn't abusive, not in the traditional sense. It was simply absolute. He bought her security, loyalty, and a love that was terrifying in its intensity, but she felt her soul slowly suffocating under the weight of his devotion and his danger. Across the city, in a windowless command center lined with monitors, Hui finished his call. He didn't raise his voice, yet the air around him thrummed with quiet, lethal authority. "The shipment is secured. The problem is contained." He hung up, his gaze falling to the black and white satellite image of a distant warehouse on his main screen. His work was done, his empire intact. Yet, when he closed his eyes, he didn't see ledgers or enemies. He saw Soraya, the fierce, warm fire he had locked away in his cold glass tower. He didn't want peace. He wanted her. He stood, the silk of his suit barely shifting. Something felt wrong, a subtle drag on the perfectly balanced scales of his universe. It was an instinct that had kept him alive since he was a teenager. He pulled out his personal phone, the one Soraya didn't know he owned, and typed a single urgent code. The apartment's surveillance flickered to life. He watched the living room, the kitchen, the hallway, all empty. But then the camera swept across the guest room closet, and he saw the empty space where the antique leather duffel had sat only yesterday. The coldness in his eyes intensified, transforming into a dangerous primal heat. Soraya heard the faint click of the elevator unlocking from the private code, far sooner than he was due. Her blood turned to ice. She had maybe 30 seconds. Grabbing the duffel, she pulled on the simplest coat she owned. She glanced at the room, the glittering view, the diamond bracelet still on the dressing table, the gilded cage she was leaving behind, and felt a terrifying mix of regret and reckless hope. She took one final, deep breath of the air she hoped to steal back. Just as she reached the door, it swung inward, revealing Hui. His face was devoid of expression, yet the air pressure in the hallway dropped 10 degrees. If you've ever felt the fear of losing yourself in a love that's too possessive, hit the like button and leave a comment below. Does Soraya have the strength to leave Hui, or is the danger outside greater than the danger within? Soraya's hand froze on the doorknob. The leather duffel, now feeling heavy as a stone, slipped an inch. Hui stepped across the threshold and the door clicked shut behind him, the sound heavy and final. His dark gaze dropped instantly to the bag at her feet, then slowly, possessively, traveled up her figure, lingering on the slight curve of her abdomen, a curve only she, and now perhaps him, could perceive. "Leaving so soon, Jagya?" His voice was a low silk, too soft for the severity of the moment, yet it coiled around her like a physical threat. "Don't call me that," she whispered, planting her feet, refusing to back away. "I need air, Hui. I need space that isn't bought and paid for. This isn't a marriage, it's a gilded mummy." He tilted his head, a gesture of casual danger. The door was locked. "You packed? You took the passport? You call that space, Soraya? I call that betrayal." He took one slow step toward her. The cologne, bergamot, and cedar hit her, a scent that had once felt like comfort and now felt like confinement. "Tell me you don't love the protection I give you. Tell me you don't love the knowledge that no one can touch you." "I hate being owned," she choked out, her voice trembling. I hate knowing that your love is just another weapon you use to keep me here. Before he could respond, the sleek black phone he always carried, the one reserved for life or death syndicate business, buzzed, a vibrating urgency that cut through the tension. He answered instantly, his attention tearing from her, a sudden sharp crack in his composure. He spoke in rapid, clipped Korean. Soraya, straining to understand, caught only a few medical terms. Sangmyeong, life, Dugeje, 2 things, and the name of the clinic she'd visited in secret. Her hands clenched. Hui's face, usually a mask of granite control, went utterly pale. He lowered the phone slowly, his eyes locking back onto Soraya, but the possessive fire was replaced by a look of stunned, almost sacred terror. You went to Dr. Yoon last week, he stated, his voice barely a rasp. He didn't wait for her denial. He crossed the short distance between them in 3 strides, his hand shooting out to gently cup her belly, his touch both fiercely protective and strangely fragile. The doctor said... He swallowed hard, his eyes dark and dilated. The doctor said there are 2 heartbeats. My heirs. My blood. His grip tightened slightly, staking an immovable claim. His breath was ragged as he lowered his head, his lips brushing her ear. You can't run, he breathed, the words heavy with absolute finality, the raw truth of the title delivered like a dark vow. I have got my twins in your belly. That makes you mine forever. Soraya shoved Hui's hands away, retreating until her back hit the cool glass window. Her breath hitched, not just from fear, but from the impossible weight of his declaration. No, you don't get to do that. The word twins echoed in the silent, terrifying space between them, amplifying the scale of her loss of control. This isn't a trade. You can't just slap a title on my womb and revoke my right to choose my life. Hui's face was still pale, but the stunned reverence had hardened into a resolve more frightening than his typical coldness. You misunderstand, Soraya. There is no negotiation. There is only a fact. You are carrying my family. The stakes are no longer just your independence, they are dynasty. They are my future, and for that, I will not take a single chance. I am not your property, she hissed, tears stinging her eyes. This doesn't change anything. I am still me. I still want out. He walked past her to the window and tapped the security interface hidden in the frame. His fingers moved quickly over the digital blueprint of the penthouse. The complex, layered security that usually gave her a false sense of peace now became a chilling reality. Your out is now an impossibility, Hui stated, turning back. Before you were valuable, now you are untouchable. Every known exit route from this residence is sealed. The staff you had contact with, the chef, the housekeeper, have been replaced. The security detail outside this door has been tripled and now reports directly to me, not a foreman. You can't even get to the kitchen for a glass of water without permission, Soraya. Try to run. I welcome it. It will prove my measures are necessary. His ruthlessness stung worse than any harsh word. You're isolating me. You're turning this into a prison. I'm turning it into a fortress, he countered, crossing the room to the heavy duffel bag. He knelt, his movements fluid, and slowly unzipped it. He didn't disturb the contents, merely noted the passport and the photograph of her grandmother. You were running to freedom, he said, zipping it back up. But out there, you were running into a crossfire. My enemies will hear about the twins before morning. 2 heirs. They will not hesitate to use you as a bargaining chip, or worse, eliminate the lineage. He stood, towering over her. The twins are my only vulnerability, and because of that, you are my world. You will stay. You will be protected. You will be safe. I will give you anything, Soraya, except the choice to leave. The duffel remained by the door, a heavy, silent monument to her failed escape. She stood frozen by the window, realizing he hadn't raised his voice, hadn't touched her in anger, but had effectively trapped her with unconditional security. The terrifying part wasn't the Mafia boss, it was the man, who was willing to destroy her emotional freedom to protect the future she was carrying. Her resistance, fueled by pride, felt utterly useless against his fear and control. The cold, controlled stillness of the penthouse was shattered just hours later. It began not with a crash, but with a calculated distant detonation. A dull, heavy thud that vibrated up through the granite floor and rattled the massive windows. The primary lights flickered off instantly, plunging the room into the emergency red glow. Hui was on his feet before the sound faded, his lethal instincts overriding everything else. He moved toward Soraya, his expression tight, not with anger, but with focused, absolute survival. "Perimeter breach. They didn't wait until morning," he murmured, pulling her behind a reinforced partition. He barked rapid orders into his secure phone in Korean. "It's the Seo clan. They hit the auxiliary power grid. They know we're here." "Who?" Soraya whispered, clutching his suit jacket, her earlier resolve to run instantly dissolving into pure animal fear. "Rivals," he clipped out. "They heard the rumors about the twins, and they think striking now, while I'm vulnerable, is their chance." He glanced at her, and in the red emergency light, his eyes were unnervingly intense. "The fortress is compromised. We're going to the secondary safe house, now." He didn't give her a choice. He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a concealed door in the library wall. They descended quickly through a service shaft to a subterranean parking garage where a black armored SUV idled, already running. The ride was tense and silent, filled only with the faint static of Hui's private comms. When they arrived, the safe house was a remote cabin nestled deep within a forested, mountainous area far outside the city. It was not opulent. It was minimalist, functional, and terrifyingly isolated. Inside, the power was limited, the communication was restricted, and there were only 2 rooms and a small kitchen. 2 guards outside, perimeter locked down. "No one comes in, no one goes out," Hui informed her, tossing his coat onto a rustic wooden chair. He was stripped bare, no security detail, no command center, just him and her, relying on the cabin's physical defenses and his sheer willpower. The forced intimacy of the small space immediately erased the cold distance of the penthouse. The air was thick with tension, fear, and the undeniable memory of their brief, intense history. As Hui methodically checked the reinforced doors and window latches, Soraya found herself simply watching him, his movements sharp, controlled, and intensely focused on survival. "There's canned food and water in the pantry," Hui said, avoiding her gaze. He was a general in a war room, not a husband in a retreat. Soraya stepped forward, her voice soft but steady. "What happens now, Hui? When the rivals are gone, when the twins are born? Do you intend to lock me up here forever?" He paused, his hand resting on the heavy deadbolt. He finally looked at her, and for the first time she saw a flicker of something raw and exposed, something beyond control. "I intend to keep you alive, Soraya," he stated. "And if that means you hate me, I can live with it. I only couldn't live with losing you." In the solitude of the forest, with the danger closing in, the simple fact of their dependence, his life depending on the safety of the heirs she carried, and her life depending on his ability to fight, bound them tighter than any legal contract. The small cabin was silent, save for the crackle of the wood stove Hui had reluctantly lit. Soraya, unable to sleep, found herself wandering the restricted space. She noticed a faint, shallow scratch on the thick wood of the main table, covered by a thin layer of dust. Curious, she ran her finger over it, then looked at the dark wood desk Hui was using to study digitized security schematics. Tucked in a corner drawer, she found a small, worn, leather-bound journal, the kind that looked utterly out of place in Hui's cold, modern world. She hesitated, knowing the violation of trust, but the desperate need to understand the man who imprisoned her outweighed her moral compass. She opened it to a page that was stained and creased, dated years before they met. It wasn't a diary, but a ledger of names. Names crossed out, names underlined, with sparse Korean notes. One name, Hana, was circled repeatedly. Next to it was a date, followed by a single word. Ijul. Forget. Then she found a small, folded picture tucked deep within the pages. It was a girl, barely 10, with Hui's sharp, dark eyes, smiling. She wore a necklace with a silver crane pendant. Soraya gasped, recognizing the pendant. Hui wore a much heavier, plainer version, constantly hidden beneath his collar. Hui entered, sensing her stillness. He stopped instantly, his eyes falling on the photo in her hand, and the usual control fractured. His face went gray and the air seemed to drain from the room. "Where did you find that?" His voice was a flat, lethal monotone. Soraya ignored the threat, focusing on the image. "Who is she, Hui? Why are you so afraid of losing me? Why is your protection always so absolute?" He remained by the door, refusing to approach. "She was my sister, Hana, 2 years younger. She was everything to me." He spoke slowly, the words tearing out. "My father, he was strong, but he made enemies. Enemies who didn't fight him but fought the future he cherished. Hana was leverage. They found her walking home from school. They returned her 3 days later." His hands clenched at his sides, knuckles white. "She wasn't alive, Soraya. They sent her back in pieces, and they left a note. It said, 'We always take the most precious thing.'" He finally walked to her, but his gaze was distant, seeing only the past. "My father was consumed by rage, but I was consumed by the geometry of the threat. They targeted the innocent. They targeted the heir. That day, I swore that nothing I ever valued would be precious enough to be taken again. I swore I would build walls so thick, a cage so gilded that the outside world would never touch what was mine." He looked at her, his eyes raw. "When the doctor said 2 heartbeats, all I saw was Hana, times 2. I'm not locking you in because I hate you, Soraya. I'm locking you in because I know exactly what they will do to you to get to me. My possessiveness, it's just fear wearing a very expensive suit." The confession was a painful, broken plea. Soraya looked at the photo, then at the man before her, suddenly seeing past the boss to the scared, traumatized boy. The danger had not just surrounded him, it had shaped him. Her anger didn't vanish, but it softened into a terrifying understanding. The small cabin became a pressure cooker of unreleased tension, yet Hui's confession had unexpectedly opened a door. The focus shifted from running and locking to survival and creation. Soraya found herself making tea for him, not out of wifely duty, but because she saw the deep exhaustion etched beneath the ink of his neck. They sat at the scratched wooden table, the journal put away, but its truth lingered between them. The only light came from the dancing flames in the stove and the single lamp casting long, peaceful shadows. "The Seo clan," Soraya started, her voice barely above a murmur. "What do they want from you specifically?" Hui stared into his teacup, the steam curling upward. "Everything. They're old blood, jealous of my rise. They think taking the future, the twins, will cripple my power structure and force me to concede territory. And if they succeed?" He looked up, meeting her gaze steadily. "They will kill you. Then they will kill me. No loose ends." His honesty was brutal, yet strangely reassuring. It was the only language he knew. "Then we have to survive," she stated, not as a victim, but as a partner. "But I won't survive by simply obeying Hui. I need to be seen. I am carrying your children, yes, but I am also Soraya. I am resourceful. I am not another victim named Hana." The mention of his sister didn't make him flinch with pain this time, but with recognition. He reached across the table, not to possess, but to simply touch her hand, his thumb tracing the faint pulse point on her wrist. "Tell me about the twins," he requested, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "Do you have names?" A genuine, small smile touched Soraya's lips for the first time since their confrontation. The immediate, lethal pressure of the outside world melted away. "I have thoughts. If it's a boy, something strong. If it's a girl, something bright. And not the typical Korean names you would expect." He leaned forward, intrigued. "Tell me one of your names, Soraya." "I was thinking, for a girl, Ilara, it means light." Hui paused, tasting the name. "Ilara. It is beautiful. Not traditional, but beautiful." He then surprised her by offering his own vulnerability. "I always pictured a son. The responsibility, the pressure I'd put on him." He shook his head slightly. "I wouldn't want him to carry the weight of my mistakes, the way I did for my father." "You don't have to raise them that way," Soraya said gently, squeezing his hand. We can give them walls, yes, but they don't have to be prison walls. They can be protection walls. We decide the difference. It was a profound moment of shared understanding. Hui's grip tightened on her hand, acknowledging the depth of her statement. They sat in that fragile truce, focusing on the tiny, impossible lives growing inside her. Lives that were the cause of their current war but offered the promise of a future they could build together. One based on conscious choice rather than inherited fear. For a fleeting moment, Soraya felt safe. Not because she was guarded, but because she was trusted with his fear. What do you think will be the toughest challenge for Soraya and Hui once the twins are born? Share your predictions in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the shocking twist that tears them apart next. The truce lasted 48 hours. Hui had stepped outside the cabin's security perimeter to meet a loyal contact, leaving Soraya alone but for the two silent, armed guards. He'd been gone less than an hour when the single secured communication line in the cabin lit up, a flash of green. Soraya hesitated, remembering Hui's strict order not to touch the line, but the caller ID read, Yongsik, security lead. She answered, her voice tight. This is Soraya. Mrs. Kang. The voice on the other end, usually granite steady, was shaking. We found something. You need to know, the CO clan, they didn't just target the power grid, they planted a rumor, a deep fake. What rumor? Soraya demanded, her blood running cold. That you had an arrangement with the Iseo clan's second-in-command before meeting the boss. That the paternity is questionable, Mrs. Kang. They are trying to destabilize his lineage claim. The accusation was a physical blow, stealing her breath. That's a lie. We know, but they planted fake genetic records. They specifically targeted the doctor who confirmed the twins, Dr. Yoon, and coerced a statement from him before he went into hiding. The line crackled. The boss is already heading back. Someone intercepted the feed and sent him the evidence. He thinks you were using the escape attempt to return to the Seo clan. The line went dead. Soraya slumped against the wall, utterly devastated. The Seo clan wasn't fighting Hui with guns. They were fighting him with the one thing he feared most. Betrayal and the loss of his heirs. An echo of his sister's tragedy. They had weaponized his trauma. Minutes later, the door slammed open. Hui stood there, not with the cold calculation she was used to, but with a blind, all-consuming fury she had never witnessed. His face was a mask of murderous rage, his eyes dark pits of agony. He held a crumpled printout of the fake genetic report. Is it true? He snarled, the sound ripping from his throat. Did you lie to me? Was the escape attempt because the blood I swore to protect is not mine? No. Hui, look at me. It's a lie. It's a deep fake. The Seo clan is setting a trap. She pleaded, taking a hesitant step toward him. He recoiled as if she'd struck him. Don't touch me. I showed you my pain. I told you about Hannah. I built this life around protecting this one fragile thing. He gestured wildly toward her stomach. You knew my cost, and you were willing to sacrifice my entire world for a brief moment of freedom. It's not about freedom. It's about honesty. I told you I wanted to be seen. You only see what you possess, she cried, the injustice of the false accusation fueling her own despair. I didn't betray you. You betrayed me by believing a fabricated lie over the truth you saw in my eyes. Truth? He laughed, a short, sharp, terrifying sound. In my world, truth is negotiable. Loyalty is not. Get out. The words hung in the air, final and devastating. He wasn't telling her to run to freedom. He was exiling her from his protection, banishing her back into the immediate crossfire of the Seo clan's war. The emotional bond they had forged, the shared name, the quiet tea, the promise of Alara, shattered into 1,000 unforgiving pieces. Soraya left. The dismissal from Hui had been absolute, a rejection so profound it severed the last emotional link she held to him. He didn't order his men to drive her, he simply withdrew his protection. He knew the Seo clan was closing in on the cabin, and by casting her out, he was simultaneously eliminating his vulnerability and delivering her to the crossfire. She found the keys to the armored SUV on the counter, a final ironic gesture of control. She drove blindly through the pre-dawn forest, the vehicle's heavily tinted windows reflecting her own hollowed-out expression. The road was slick, the air frigid. She was free physically, but the image of Hui's tormented face, believing the worst of her after she had shared his grief, was a heavier chain than any diamond bracelet. She reached the main road leading back to the city. Her original plan had been to contact the American embassy, disappear, and raise her children far from this violent world.
You will be safe.
She slowed the SUV to a crawl, the engine purring softly. She could do it now. She could drive straight past the danger, past the betrayal, and reclaim her life. But what kind of life? She thought of the twins, Alara, the light. The thought of raising them, knowing their father's raw, dangerous love was out there, broken and consumed by the guilt of betrayal, twisted her heart. He hadn't just rejected her, he had rejected the one thing that had ever made him vulnerable. He had chosen fear over the trust she had painstakingly offered. Soraya pulled the SUV to the side of the road and turned off the engine. Silence returned, heavy and demanding. He is going to die here, she realized. If he believed the twins weren't his reckless fury would destroy him. Not just physically, but emotionally. The Seo clan would win because they had successfully weaponized his deepest wound. She pulled out the emergency satellite phone Hui had given her, the one she had intended to use only for the embassy. Instead, she dialed the one number she still remembered from the journal. Yong Sek, security lead. Yong Sik, she commanded, her voice suddenly clear, steady, and utterly determined. Get an encrypted line to the intelligence chief of the Seo clan. I am coming back. I have a proposal. And I have the information they need to destroy Hui's territory on one condition. The guard, stunned, started to protest. Mrs. Kang, you can't... You will tell Hui that I am betraying him, Soraya interrupted, the choice hardening inside her. Tell him I confirmed the Seo clan's claim, and that I am bringing the twins to them. Make sure he knows every detail of my treason. I need him consumed with pure, blind rage. I need him to think he has nothing left to lose. She slammed the phone shut. Her hands, resting on her swollen belly, were no longer trembling. She wasn't running from Hui, she was running for him, choosing a path so dangerous it required radical acceptance of his world. She realized, with terrifying clarity, that the only way to save the man who had imprisoned her was to become his greatest perceived enemy. The secondary safe house was chaos. Hui, consumed by the planted reports of Soraya's betrayal, had abandoned all caution. He believed his entire world, his lineage, his control, his last fragment of humanity was gone. His men were ordered to retreat, but Hui stayed, waiting for the Seo clan's approaching ambush, fueled by a self-destructive fury. He didn't have to wait long. The cabin door splintered inward. The Seo clan's intelligence chief, a man named Minho, stood there, flanked by heavy security. Kang Hui, Minho sneered, surveying the wreckage of Hui's composure. The mighty dragon brought down by a fragile flower. She sent us a message, Hui. Your wife. She is not my wife, Hui roared, his gun raising, but Minho cut him off. She is coming to us. She confirmed the illegitimacy of the twins and offered us the precise locations of 3 of your key strongholds in exchange for her protection. She chose survival, Hui. She chose the twins' safety over your pride. Hui's finger tightened on the trigger, a tremor running through him. The emotional wound was too deep. He wanted to end it all. Just then, the outer defenses of the cabin exploded. Soraya, driving the armored SUV, smashed through the exterior fence line, headlights blinding the Seo clan's men. She threw open the driver's door and walked toward the confrontation, her presence a silent, fierce challenge. I didn't choose survival, Soraya announced, her voice echoing with cold clarity. I chose the truth. And the truth is, Minho, I came here to give Hui the strength you tried to steal from him. She walked past the armed men and stopped directly in front of Hui. She looked him straight in his anguished, murderous eyes. Look at me, Hui. I didn't run away. I ran back. I made sure you were burning with rage because I knew only that fire would keep you alive long enough to fight. I accepted your world, even if you couldn't accept my heart. Minho laughed. She's bluffing. Kill them both. As the Seo clan raised their weapons, Soraya didn't flinch. She placed her hands on her stomach, instinctively protecting the twins, and met Hui's gaze, which was suddenly clearing, the blind rage transforming into dawning, terrifying understanding. "Prove the paternity lie, Hui," she challenged. "Prove I'm yours. Fight for what you fear to lose." His control returned, honed by years of darkness, but now anchored by a profound, unconditional trust in her choice. He finally understood. She hadn't betrayed him. She had risked everything to weaponize his only weakness, his fear of loss, to force him to choose survival. "You lose, Minho," Hui said, his voice dropping to the familiar lethal calm. "Because you forgot the one rule of my world. You never threaten what's mine." At that moment, the cabin windows shattered as Hui's loyal security team, alerted by Young-sik, who acted on Soraya's plan, launched a counterattack. A rapid, brutal gunfight erupted. Hui immediately pulled Soraya behind him, his body a living shield, moving and fighting with absolute terrifying proficiency. When the chaos subsided, Minho was neutralized, and Hui stood over him, his breathing ragged, his focus instantly snapping back to Soraya. He threw his gun aside and walked to her, his hands trembling. He cupped her face, his thumb tracing the tear tracks on her cheek. "You didn't run. You were never running. You risked everything just to get me back." "I told you I was not Hana," she whispered, leaning into his touch. "I told you I was not a victim. You chose to believe a lie over my honesty, but I still chose us." "I am sorry," Hui breathed, a raw admission that cost him more than any fight. "I surrender my control, Soraya. My love has been a prison. It stops now. You are mine, yes, but only because I am yours. And that's a choice we make every day." 3 months later, Soraya stood in a sun-drenched nursery in a new, less fortified residence near the ocean. In her arms, she held Alara, and next to her, Hui gently cradled their son, Ji-hoon, wise and strong. Hui's power hadn't diminished, but his heart had changed. He no longer tracked her movements with fear, but with reverence. "They are perfect," Soraya murmured, looking at him. Hui leaned in, kissing her forehead. "We are perfect. We survived the storm, Jagia." He looked down at their sleeping son, a genuine soft smile on his lips. "And you chose to bring the light back to my darkness. You taught me that the walls aren't meant to keep you in, but to keep the world out. Together." Soraya rested her head against his shoulder, their impossible family complete. She had found freedom not by running from the Mafia boss, but by accepting him, dangers and all. If Soraya and Hui's crazy, dangerous love story proved that truth can save you, then hit subscribe right now. What do you think about Soraya's final risky move? Was she right to choose trust over safety? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.